Morning, everybody. Um, Thank you for being here again with us on the last day of seeing the world through Sudan, critical frameworks for understanding the crises and implications of counter-revolutionary wars. I want to begin by once again thanking our panelists from yesterday for such poignant and powerful perspectives on Sudan in light of the long durée of revolutionary struggle that continues to leave ruin and deprivation in its wake. When considering, as we did together yesterday, the political ecology of Sudan and the multi-vectored contestations for arable land, lucrative minerals, and sustainable lifeways, the question of national culture becomes expressly delinked from poetic luxury and decadent aesthetic taste. This war in which wheat is a weapon of post-colonial neoliberal austerity and religion in a return to its medieval mode sanctions and sanctifies the necropower constitutive of statecraft. This war, in which feminized labor may be the most formidable way forward, and the and re-centralized nightmare of military rule, makes time immemorial. The scenes of famine, fatality, and ostensibly forgotten, the seriality of these scenes, such a state of affairs, its velocity, its violence, the violence of its all too visible invisibility, scrambles narrative, disassembles history, liquefies explanatory power, and yet, in so doing, makes something available beyond the traditional protocols of cultural production. The Sudanese cultural workers that we have with us today include, and my pronunciation is also a work in progress, so excuse this, Ibrahim Ahmed, Ahmed Mahmoud, Ibrahim El-Haj, Mossab Baba, Al-Sara El-Gadi, and Hanin Sir Ahmed. I want to reserve a special thanks to Sarah El-Wad for guiding the exhibition tour at the Brown Arts Institute, which is, as previously mentioned, the curatorial extension to this conference made possible by Liblio. A special thanks to Liblio, you know. Yeah. Sarah's work, which literally grounds the exhibition, illuminates a radical politics of recursivity, return, and recollection that plays across material rupture and the poetics of repair that leans into irresolution and collage. Each of these cultural workers, as I think you can see if you were able to look around, confound our preconceived aesthetic understandings by disabusing viewers of any objective onlooking or politically neutral point of view, both on the war and the world remade by it. However, what feels imperative to mention is that these works break down that classical and colonial divide between art and personal interest, not by merely being documentary or archival. Indeed, some works you saw today fail to fit neatly under either of those rubrics. Rather, it is how the films are saturated, framed, cross-cut, episodic and epic, but not romantic. How textiles and textures are interlaid to reflect the kaleidoscopic life one is made to live in a place like Sudan. How music defies or redefines medium in ways disobedient to the monovocal and homogeneous imaginary of nation states. That is to say, these artists, through attention to form and technique, disform the technical common sense of political documentary, cultural archaeology, agitprop, and aesthetic inheritance. Today's panels on return from the tour give us an opportunity to think together about what crisis-induced inventiveness means for Sudanese national legacy and Sudanese revolutionary strategy, irreducible as it is to crisis. How do we give language to and create language around a war that is yet unfolding? How does war make memory itself a radical method? What does it mean to document or intend to index the displaced when every place one goes feels politically pernicious? Where archives are not only ephemeral, but violently evanesce, what cannot be disremembered and what must be left behind? What is the purchase of artistic truth-telling in a national paradigm of blinding militarized violence? These are just a few of the questions I think we will be invited to contemplate. In conclusion, the Canadian Trinidadian poet Dion Brand once said, quote, "Interred in narratives of racism, we try to detonate them with counter narratives, and we wait for narrative to do what war might do, After viewing these works of art and speaking with these artists, I think we will see that the Sudanese are not ones willing to wait. The ashes of the performance theater and university archive have instead released a new poetic license, the revolutionary lyricisms of which are written in the fabric and infrastructure of cultural creativity and aesthetic experimentation in today's Sudan and the larger Sudanese diaspora. I want to thank, finally, my co-conveners, again, Luluyo and Bayan, for being the brain and backbone of such an audacious endeavor. I'm proud to have worked beside you both, truly. Thank you to Dan Smith and Christy from the Watson Institute here at Brown for their gracious support and diligent patience over the last few months putting this together. Yeah, I can't believe this has even been made possible. I want to thank Brown, the African Initiative at the Watson Institute for International Public Affairs, Brown Arts Institute, the Cogent Institute for the Humanities, Literary Arts, and the Pembroke Center for Teaching and Research on Women, the Department of Africana Studies, the Department of Modern Culture and Media, and the Department of Comparative Literature, and the Sudan Human Rights Hub for their support of this conference. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Yassmin. And again, thank you all for coming back.
Thank you, Jordan, for introducing us to the second day of the conference so beautifully. And I'm really quite excited for this next session, especially, yesterday we spent many wonderful hours in conversation around the sort of the political, the economic analysis, and really grappling with the concepts of revolution itself. Today, and what I really enjoyed about the way that the convening team has kind of brought this together, we are now kind of transposing that into the cultural space, the artistic space, a space that maybe that speaks, I think, to these concepts differently and allows for different entrance points for people, I think, which I think is incredibly important, and also speaks to the impact of the revolution in a different way, because most Sudanese people, I think I'll speak for myself rather than the Sudanese people, but the 2018-19 revolution brought with it a wave of artistic flourishing, the likes of which we had understood was within the Sudanese capacity, but maybe hadn't seen before. Certainly for the children of the Bashir regime, the children born in the 80s and 90s who kind of grew up with just stories, memories of a different kind of Sudan, but without perhaps the opportunity to explore. And so what I'm quite excited about today is the opportunity to be in conversation with some of these artists. And I have the pleasure of speaking to Ibrahim Ahmed and Ahmed Mahmoud from Aflam Sudan, who are just going to come join us now. And for those who are in or can access Providence, there's a wonderful exhibition that was previously mentioned where some of these films are being shown at the moment, some of these short films. But Ibrahim and Ahmed, are you both there? Sorry. Let me know if we'll just get you both on screen. All right. Ibrahim Snoopy. Muted by the host. Just 1 second, as I will find the way to unmute you. Ask to unmute.
Yes, now I'm mute and unmuted.
Yeah. Hi, Ahmed. Hello.
Yeah, hey, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Is it possible for you to bring up your video at all?
Yeah. But
unable to start.
Yeah, we need you to allow us. Can you allow us to?
No, just 1 second.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience, everyone. We're just getting the... Okay, yeah. The darkening of our room is not the descent of uh, darkness, but actually just the blinds coming down so you can see us a little better.
Mm. Now I can see everyone.
Ibrahim and Ahmed, are you able to switch on your videos now? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Ah, amazing. Welcome, welcome. Yeah,
Hello, everyone.
Snoopy. All
How are
right,
you
we'll
doing?
get started. So for those who don't know, Ibrahim Snoopy Ahmed is a director and producer from Khartoum, Sudan, currently based in Nairobi. And his short documentary, Journey to Kenya, was selected for numerous international film festivals, mashallah. And we also have Ahmed Mahmoud. Are you there, Ahmed? Who is a videographer and filmmaker with 10 years of experience in production throughout East Africa, the founder of Dialectic Films and directed short films for Nas Shaghala. So I guess I just wanted to start by situating you both in kind of this current moment. Ibrahim, could you kick us off and let us know a little bit about what you're currently working on, but also how you see this current moment in Sudanese filmmaking and Sudanese creative production as it relates to the revolution?
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank anyone who made this happen. This is like a huge effort, and I highly appreciate everyone who's working on this and making sure that Sudan's voice is, loud and clear. At the moment, I just released a music video like 2 days ago, something that I've been working on for the past 10 months, but like not back to back because you know how productions are. But yeah, the music video is a representation of what Sudanese people are feeling at the moment. And it's kind of projecting their inner feelings, and their mental health. Like for example, one of the scenes is someone is actually eating with his friends, which is something that we used to do all the time in Sudan. And suddenly he realized that this is all an illusion and that this didn't really happen. So this is what most of the people right now are feeling at the moment around the world in exile. So that's what I wanted to do to showcase this moment in history and what are people feeling at the moment through a short music video. I wanted to do it in a feature film or a longer film, but at the moment, because productions, we're a new environment and we need to get to know like local producers, local production company, because obviously we went out without all the without our equipment. We left it to the RSF. I hope that they make films with it, but for the moment, like we're out of tools, so we're starting from scratch. All we have is our knowledge, so we're trying to play around with that knowledge. How can we collaborate remotely with our friends, in Egypt, in Uganda, in UAE, all these countries, to make a production that represents what we're feeling right now as Sudanese people.
Thank you, Ibrahim. And we'll dig a little bit more into the kinds of work and also the challenges of production in a place like Sudan anyway. But Ahmed, I'm going to come to you. And I want you to tell us a little bit, for those who aren't aware, about Nas Shaghala, because I think, this series of films and documentaries have snippets of sort of the everyday person in Sudan and a documentary of this current moment. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you're doing and the approach that you have to this particular series and your work in general?
Yeah, certainly. So Nas Shaghala is it's produced by Colosseum Films. Colosseum, it's a Sudanese production company. It's one of the production companies, for example, behind Goodbye Julia, the highly acclaimed film produced before the war. And I worked on it with an incredible team of Sudanese filmmakers, different roles, producers and photographers. And in the period following the war in April 2023, we traveled to the safe areas, basically where other people from Khartoum found themselves. to document the stories of basically the resilience of the groups in Kassala, in Halfa, and in Madani, responding to the crisis. It was incredibly hard, given the circumstances, just to travel around with the equipment and just to navigate the security restrictions around filming. But we were motivated basically by the hardships that even our subjects per se, our stories, our heroes are going through daily, that we felt that we needed to tell their stories as well. So it was an incredible project, and it's still continuing now. Even right now, there are movies being filmed there.
I guess the question I have for both of you is whether you would say that there is a specific kind of Sudanese aesthetic in the work that you're creating, or are you seeing it being created, and how is it related to perhaps the current war, counter-revolutionary war, and also the revolution itself? And are you seeing it change, or is it something that's quite stable? And how does it maybe relate to previous decades, or the sort of creative work that has come out, say since post-independence?
Okay, I think for the longest time, I personally believe for the longest time that whenever we talk about Sudanese art or Sudanese aesthetic, I think we end up kind of focusing on Khartoum and maybe the north regions, basically where many of us had the privilege to and access to tools to tell these stories and actually to attend spaces like this space today. But it's even since the sit-ins around the country, not just in Khartoum, since April 2019, I think we got exposed to the other parts of the country in a better way, in a more effective way. And it was amazing to witness that all Sudanese artists have been building upon this. I mean, until the point where we had the massacre on June 3rd, that broke down all the sit-ins, about 17 sit-ins, different sit-ins around the country. And then following that, the military coup, it was these events stifled this connection between different Sudanese artist groups, and because Sudan is huge, and what's aesthetically pleasing to someone from Alpha is not the same for someone in Jibal Nova, for example. But we had this historic moment where we all got together and exchanged different forms of arts, whether it's music, film, and paintings and stuff. And I think that's the key, where when it's just about bringing us together, bringing Sudanese artists together. And sadly, today, now that millions of us are displaced, again, we find ourselves also just connecting together as artists, and hopefully, we continue to create the Sudanese aesthetic that we have been always talking about.
Snoopy?
I hope my answer is correct. I think that right now, or like since I started doing films and content, I was always about resilience, the resilience of art and sports. That's why I've done a lot of and fashion, the things that the society or like the Islamic regimes, things that it was fighting. I was always documenting those kind of stuff. So I think that with war, the the difference is that we're now in a new geographical location, but we're still struggling. So in Sudan, we were struggling against the system. So that's why we have all these arts that are always underground. And I try to reflect it through videos and all of that. Like, for example, once there was a Comic-Con in Sudan, and we were documenting that. And then, telling people that you should bring your kids for this, and then cosplay and all of that. And then when we released the music, we released the video, people accused us of being worshiping Satan and all of that, which was funny because the whole idea was just to have the kids enjoy and have fun. So right now what we're doing, I'm surrounded by a lot of artists here in Nairobi specifically. So I'm trying to make sure that as much as possible I reflect their stories, and the resilience of what they're doing. For example, a few months ago, we had the residency, which had 21 artists. So I was trying to be as much as possible involved with the filmmakers, trying to tell their stories, improve their production. So we had three films, which was mainly about post-war characters and war stories. For example, one of the film was about two couples getting married and how were they able, not able, but how they were trying to link up with their families in Sudan, remotely, and all that stress over, their families being, in danger. They can be bombed in every second. So everything's what's it called? Like, if around these kind of narratives.
I'm curious, and maybe this is for both of you, because what you're talking about is kind of capturing a current moment, but also a grappling of what kind of story we want to remember, right? And the challenge of representing things as they are versus representing things as we would like them to be, representing things, for example, creating art about what the past was like, accurately or in the way that kind of makes us feel good about ourselves and so on. And so how do you deal with that tension? I mean, Ahmed, you mentioned Goodbye Julia, the reception. I did an interview with Kordofani, and he talked about the challenge of showing the relationship between the north and the south of Sudan in a way that maybe didn't make the northerners feel good about themselves, that sort of brought a mirror up to how the northerners actually treated southerners, and how reactions from viewers and audiences, like in some ways were defensive, but also in some ways he felt like it was important for us to be having this conversation, particularly at this point in time. So how do you both approach this challenge of how, of memory and kind of nostalgia?
I honestly, personally, I think resistance art, if we agree on that term, I think it's more concerned about the now, really, and about the future more than it is really concerned about the past. And I think this is evident in the kind of art that was produced during the revolution in 2018, 2019 at the sit-in, and during the protests before the sit-ins. For example, a lot of the art not only just depicted the martyrs and shuhada from the protesters, but even the victories that we as protesters had over the police. Like we had murals to celebrate the first time we defeated the police trucks in Abbasiyah and Omdurman. It was a huge, famous mural, and and we had different murals celebrating different moments from the revolution, and other murals celebrating our idea of free Sudan and what we hope for the future. So the art around resistance and around revolution often focuses on today and tomorrow rather than yesterday. I think that's the essence of a revolution. Uh, and then the fact that we as much as the military has really tried to get rid of that. But even for example, during the signing of the first before the coup, after following the agreement that happened, the power sharing agreement between the civilians and the government, a lot of the art has been lost. A lot of the art that were produced during the revolution, uh, which brings us back to the fact that I think this new generation of artists, particularly in Sudan, are more focused with the future than the past. It's not about nostalgia for them. It's just about change and art that brings change.
Ibrahim, would you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I just want to add that also, we don't necessarily have to focus on a lot on the past, but also not excluding it, because like sometimes when we overlook our past and then things start to this is what led to the war in Sudan. because we don't learn from our past. So that's why I think including it in our work, you know, films and productions, is a little bit necessary. Not necessarily a lot of it, but also just to give a little bit of context about what happened and how we should be doing things in the future, just to prevent, you know, issues and wars.
And maybe can I ask you that question again, Ibrahim, around how you deal with the tension between, you know, people's idea and romanticism of Sudan versus how things actually are or were?
I guess that in the Sudanese community, we always like to sugarcoat things, and then the ugly stuff that we do, we keep it always in the back. So I guess that we need to bring it up to the front and face each other. You know, like this is like the movie Goodbye Julia. It's a huge challenge because people don't like to say that we are racist, and this is why we did to Southerners. But we need to often do that in our works so that people can understand and identify the problems that we keep hiding.
And so how do you personally kind of do this in your work? What is the approach that you take to engaging with these tensions? Ibrahim, I'll start with yourself.
I guess that I'd like to you know, tell the truth, what was happening, how people were acting with each other in my productions or whatever work that I'm doing, but also not getting too much involved in it because it can reach to a point where people get annoyed, and sometimes you face a huge backlash. So I try to, as much as possible, just to be in between, like addressing the issue, but also like trying to find a middle point where people don't get too, you know, defensive and start like, but why did you do that? You shouldn't have done that. Well, I will do that, but in a soft way, if it makes sense.
Ahmed, you sort of mentioned that in resistance art, it's about the now and the future. And I'm curious about what in your creative work, what that kind of future looks like. You mentioned sort of moving away from the center as being the kind of, you know, the quote unquote center. And so I'd love to hear more about that from you. And also maybe like if there are any particular stories or artists that you have met from outside the center that have particularly struck or resonated with you?
Yeah, actually, for example, growing up, my parents they listened to Wardi, Mustafa Sid Ahmed, and whatnot, and we grew up outside Sudan. I grew up in Saudi, and Wardi, and then they're like the nostalgia artists. They're like the diaspora favorite artists. I think a lot of few agree if the Sudanese now in the house, and I personally never related to that, but recently I started following. Sudanese rappers in Europe, in France in particular. A lot of them are illegal migrants, and they also do make music about their experience being diasporas. And it's the interesting thing is that when they talk about Sudan, they don't talk about it the same way Wardi or Mustafa Sid Ahmed, for example, talk about it. It's not this nostalgic overtone. It's how they see it today. It's why they left it, and how they want to go back to it. And for example, one of my favorite artists today is Ebobai. He's from Darfur and he lives in France. And he has an amazing song where he basically talks about his trip crossing the Mediterranean to Italy and then to France. And he says point blank that I'm not going back to Sudan unless I have money. And I love that. I love this. I love this kind of celebration of Sudan in that we don't really shy away from that. We don't have an amazing past. We don't have a past that we aspire to, and we should focus more, I think, on celebrating the survivors of this horrible past, and who are building today and creating a better future. I think this is how I try to this is how I try to reflect myself and my work as well.
Ibrahim, I saw you nodding there. Were you resonating with what Ahmed was saying?
Yeah, definitely, because yeah, I mean, the most honest people, I guess, are rappers. They just speak the truth, and then they don't have any restrictions, so they can say whatever they want to say, whatever they want to say that. But yeah, I mean, for a while, all these artists, reside in Khartoum, so they always talk about Khartoum and the beauty of Khartoum, and then people from other areas feel like, okay, are we in Sudan or not? Like, are we part of this? So they can't relate to what they're saying in Khartoum. Like, I have a friend of mine, he never really liked, Werdi or Delamin or all these artists because they never really speak about him, even though that's not mandatory, but at least I need to relate to what they're saying. So it's all about, elite people, specific people. So now that war happened, and like now we can see a bigger picture. Oh, okay, this is why people from those regions were, upset. And then now that we're in exile, now we feel the same. And some of, not necessarily, but one of them would be saying like, we told you so, but you didn't listen. Now it happened in Khartoum. Now you feel what we're feeling. So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to keep talking about Khartoum? Or now that it hits you in your own house, now you should see the bigger picture. Few artists like me and Mahmoud, and others were conscious enough, since even before war to be addressing these kind of issues. But now that it hits everyone, people are starting to be more conscious. And then, okay, so now we need to be a little bit less selfish and talk about the whole Sudan and try to solve this. And then we come together, all of us, east, west, north, south.
Something that strikes me as both of you are speaking is that actually these kind of artistic conversations are happening from Sudanese artists to each other and to the Sudanese people rather than to people outside the Sudanese context, right? Do you think that is kind of when Sudanese artists are creating, are they talking to each other and are they talking to the Sudanese people primarily? Or are they actually trying to make Sudan, or are they trying to speak to like a broader audience? And what do you think, how do you think that conversation is evolving? How are you seeing it evolve?
I guess that in each conversation, when we come to that target audience point, so we always target like Sudanese people because in the first there are the victims, let's say. So we need to address them, like how can we all solve it? Because as an artist, okay, you have some kind of a solution, but also you need to address the right people to be doing the act and trying to solve it with you. So that's the main thing to me, to address Sudanese people. This is what we should be doing. And then for the next part of the target audience would be, international audience, people other than Sudanese, to really understand what we're going through. And then if there's any common points or what's it called, like hulul that they did in their own country, and then they can send us feedback, or they can tell us like, listen guys, we went through this before, you should be doing this and this and this, because we don't have enough experience with all the things, and we always overcome our past, so we don't learn. So we need that international voice also to tell us like, listen guys, this is what happened in 1990 something in this country, so you can learn from that.
I think yeah, it's important that Sudanese talk to one another as artists, but also the fact that there's now, I think, millions by now between Egypt, Kenya, Uganda, even the Gulf. People who, a lot of them have, this is the first time for them to actually leave Sudan and to engage with different cultures and different artists. And I think something good, usually great things come out of when people from different cultures meet and clash and whatever. And I think I'm one person who's really excited about what's gonna come out of artists who are now forced to adapt to these new cultures and engage with them, learn from them, and also teach them. And I think we're already starting to seeing this in Egypt, for example, because the majority of Sudanese people are there now. It's exciting what's happening there between Sudanese people and Sudanese artists and Egyptian artists. Uh, Additionally, I think the Sudanese diaspora in the West, in Europe or the US, uh, now can play even a bigger role in supporting these artists, these groups, because they have more access to internet now, being outside Sudan, where the internet was not the best. So their work can be more accessible to Sudanese diaspora, and then as well as much as that to grants, to funding opportunities. Uh, and I think this it's about time that we look at the displacement situation. It's as bad as it is, but Sudanese people are the most resilient people I think ever, and they always find a way to make the best out of situations like this. And I think we should always remember that and celebrate it. And yeah.
How do you think the sort of creative output of Sudanese artists has changed from during the revolution to now in the midst of this war? Like, do you see them as distinct kind of chapters?
Um, yeah. Not chapters, but maybe like a side A, side B. It's the same album or the same CD, but I think again, like just the fact that there's more access to tools that were not easily available in Sudan now. I'm talking about the displaced artists, because there are many artists who are still in Sudan today, of course, but it's with the situation, it's hard to reflect on that. But I think it's a continuation of what happened at different sittings in the country, just where people really used art not just as a way to express, but art was practically used as a weapon during the revolution. I think Snoopy agrees, because Snoopy, for example, his office in Khartoum was overlooking one of the hottest spots in the city during the protests, and he knows that he had to use the camera just as much as the police officers downstairs were using their guns. He used it the same way, and Sudanese people understood this during the revolution, and we built upon it. And then like I said earlier, the coup and now the war just stifled these efforts. But yeah, would you agree?
Mhm. I guess, yeah. I mean, the cool part is that, we had a lot of great talents in Sudan, a lot of great filmmakers, artists, painters, musicians, but they were always, constantly harassed by the government. So they couldn't like express themselves. So when the sit-in came, and then you see all these murals, the music, there was like the trendy song Sudan Bidun Kezan, all these murals in the sitting, and everybody was shocked, like, where was this in the past? So it was always there, but we couldn't see it, until this day. We see all these artists, like here in Nairobi, where in the gallery, Kenyans were shocked, like, where did you learn all of this? Even in an established country like Kenya, they don't have this much, artistry in paintings. And this is a statement by, people from the Kenyan artistic, creative, community. So but and now that we are all, outside of Sudan, and like Ahmed said, we have more access to internet, to online payments. Like, for example, I couldn't even buy music online because we don't have Visa cards and all of that. So all these restrictions were restricting us a little bit, but that didn't, eliminate us from doing, great stuff. And now that we're abroad, we have more artistic freedom because we have access to all of this stuff. And yet still we are thinking about each other, like right now in Sudan. I was, let's say, I thought of, what I'm doing, dedicating 20 to 30% to fellow artists or filmmakers, whether it's online workshops or meetings to help them, because we don't have institutions to teach filmmaking, all of that. So me and Mahmoud and others, like, we learned online through YouTube and books. So the ones that weren't that lucky, we try to dedicate from our own time to help them. But now that war happened, I'm dedicating even more time to help other artists, and also artists that are still in Sudan. For example, the next project that me and another person we are working on, we're working on how to provide jobs to artists in Sudan, and how to keep them, doing their thing, and not switching to other professions and losing their, artistic side. Like, some of them, like, couldn't even make a living out of art, because even in the normal, without war, you can't really make 100% living out of art. And right now, a lot of them, like, okay, we're not going to do this anymore because we can't provide for our families. So people like us in the diaspora and abroad are trying to provide these opportunities to them, so that they can continue their things. And no matter what we do, we can never see things their own way. So we need them to do art while in the war zone, because it's a different perspective.
Yeah, I'm curious about the creation of art in a war zone, and how, when we think of sort of archiving, curation, preserving, all these sort of methods of ensuring that art is somehow not maybe sustainable, but continues to kind of live so that it's accessible for many generations to come. Is that something people are thinking about, or is it about more art in this current moment and in its ephemeral, even like when we think about the murals during the sit-ins and so on, and how maybe they were covered over, but the sort of the place that art holds in people's collective memory still remains. How do you think of how long that art will last for, and the ways in which we're able to preserve them?
I think that recently I attended a workshop done by Ahmed, and it was about archiving and then, preserving the culture and all of that. So right now, every project that I look at it in a cultural way, preserving, how to preserve, this without it being destroyed. Because one of the things that war does is, eliminating a lot of culture, a lot of habits, a lot of things in the community gets destroyed within time during war. So I make sure that every project is a cultural preserving project, and or like it has to do with, preserving a specific thing. For example, I'm working on this campaign called Saving Sudan Living Heritage. And everything that we do is about the living heritage. So we try to preserve it through videos, photos, essays, articles, books, so that, in the future, whatever, no matter what happens, it's always, somewhere out there on cloud or any library.
Ahmed, is this something, I mean, I should also mention for those who might not be aware, but like you talked about destruction of art and so on. The National Museum was looted. We've seen many cases of destruction of cultural artifacts and so on. I think there was a story that I saw of like a particular artifact being sold on eBay by an RSF soldier. So like for really not enough money at all. But there's many different problems with that situation. Like, is this how does the preservation come into your thinking, Ahmed?
Personally, and I don't know, this might sound really bad, but I really don't care about the National Museum, to be honest. Uh, and I hope other people who really need the money find ways to sell whatever is left there. Uh, but again,
I
it's the
appreciate that. And can you tell us a bit more about why you don't care? Because I think it's interesting,
I
right?
just yeah, I just don't really I don't know. It's just really something. There's more destruction, more like there's more destruction happening in Khartoum. more, I think, far more important than the museum being hit, or the Qasr al-Jamhuri, the presidential palace, and all these, like it's their actual lives being ruined. And I don't think it's just a point of focus for me. At least not now. Maybe I will be upset about it after the war or something. I don't know. But right now, I think the art that needs, like Snoopy said, there are artists who are left today, who are still today in Sudan, uh, trying to produce art with the little means that they have. And me and Snoopy, we're really trying to follow as much as possible. For example, TikTok is one of the places that they still showcase some of their art and their journey as artists stuck in war, and they're putting out content as much as they can with the little internet they have. And I think that's art really worth preserving. This is artifacts really worth preserving and talking about, and not something that I think 10 people visited a year and no one really cared.
No, that's I actually really
I
appreciate
know.
the honesty as well, because I think that sometimes it's, you know, it's easy to kind of get, I wonder if, you know, things like the museum and the presidential palace, they're all associated with the state of Sudan, which is the very thing that a lot of
And the
people,
Queen of England, yes.
yes, and the UK, yeah. The very kind of thing that a lot of people are resisting, that sort of that type of engagement with art. Now, we are getting close to time, so I'm going to ask if you have any questions from the chat, or if there are any questions in the room for panelists. I will continue to ask questions, but yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Snoopy and Ahmed, for your really illuminating answers and for this discussion. I just wanted to hear you both talk more about like what it's like to produce art in, you know, the context of displacement and having to like integrate into like different artistic communities. And I feel like, yeah, the cultural scene in Nairobi, from like what it looked like from afar, was much more sort of receptive and like open to like holding space for Sudanese stories, more so than I would say Egypt, which felt like that was just an impossibility. So I'm wondering, yeah, in the context of Nairobi, especially in the protests that happened in Kenya like 2 months ago, like how there's been sort of, yeah, how art has sort of functioned as a medium to like connect our stories beyond like Sudanese people, but especially, yeah, in the context of displacement.
And yes, definitely, it's in Egypt and in the Gulf, as much as there are Sudanese people in these countries, it's harder for them to basically create, or uh, even basically make art, let alone political art. The same as well in some places in Africa. Like recently, Rwanda, for example, they had to kick out a lot of Sudanese students after some incidents that took place. But like Snoopy maybe can talk more about what's been done in Kenya, because I think it's one of the best examples for this artistic movement that's happening now.
Yeah, in Kenya, it's like we have all the freedom in the world that we can do whatever we want. Even if it's a little bit political, we don't have all these restrictions. You know, it's a neutral, you know, place. We did Aflam Sudan, and we screened all these great films, and the whole theme was about, you know, reflecting Sudan, remembering Sudan, keeping Sudan on the map, and introducing Sudan to the Kenyan community, and then making it easy for Sudanese people to integrate to the Kenyan community, because a lot of them don't really know a lot about, you know, Kenya and Africa. We were more into the Arab side of the world. So when they came here, and you know, all these cultural differences, so we needed to ease it in to the Sudanese people. Also, all these artists, like, because it's like the best place for an artist to be here. That's why most of them are here. You know, you have all these you know, galleries, all these opportunities. You can just come up with an idea, and then instantly you can implement it the next week. You know, you want an art gallery, you can go to Ngara, you can go to the Circle, and everyone's open. And there are, yesterday itself, then this is a huge thing. Yesterday there was actually a auction. It's the first time that I attend an auction. I always see it on TV, in movies, but it's the first time. And then imagine having a auction, like, okay, and then you would see like all these numbers. Okay, people pay more money because the money is going to Sudan, to Darfur. So you would be so happy that this is happening here. And I don't think that it's happened in Uganda or in Rwanda, which is basically sending out a message like, listen, guys, this is the best place to be in. And the auction, like, I don't know the numbers, but to see all these paintings go for 400, 500, $700, 900 and auctioning, and the guy keeps ringing the bell. This is something that gives you an idea of how artists are functioning here in Nairobi. And even me myself, I went to shoot a lot around where I live in my apartment. I used it so much in many products, films, music videos. I even shot at the airport. And this is the funny thing, that the trauma that the NISS gave us in Sudan, like every time you hold up a camera as a filmmaker, you would always be looking around for someone, because someone might arrest you in a minute. So when we were to the airport, and the officer was walking towards us, we're like, okay, we are gonna get busted today. He was like, okay, guys, you can shoot whatever. He didn't even talk to us, like, hey, what's up? How you doing? And then he walked away. So that shows you how, Kenya is free. You can shoot wherever, you can do whatever you want.
Thanks, Ibrahim. There's another question.
Is this on? Oh, okay, now it's on. Okay, so Sarah A asks, I'm curious about the gendered contours of art and cultural production and memory. For example, are women able to produce in the context of war? And in what ways do women's perspectives remember and construct Sudan and Sudanese identity?
I can answer that. I don't know if the answer is relevant or relatable, but there are a lot of female artists here in Kenya. You have Amani, you have many names, and they're Muna. So they're all were participating in the gallery, and then a lot of their work was reflecting either about the Sudanese culture or what's happening right now, like a film related to war. Um, Also, like Rawia's film, she's a filmmaker, and then she wrote, direct the film. And there's also Tahlil, which is a female singer. Also, she keeps doing all these, concerts slash, you know, yeah, concerts around in Nairobi, and she has all the freedom she wants. Even to me, like when I'm on board on any project, I make sure that it's gender balanced. Like there's a documentary that I'm doing, and I made sure that it's gender balanced so that we can talk about both sides, because we don't want just a perspective of male only or female only. So we need to balance things. So that's how I look at things, at the moment, to balance it. And also not only gender balance, but also like geographical balance, like what Ahmad said. We were always into Khartoum, the center. So now it's about, can we bring someone from the west, from the east, from the north, from the south? Not in a very like tough way, like it's mandatory, but that's as much as possible to make it flexible.
Thank you. Because we're almost out of time, I want to get through the next. There's another question in the chat, and then Jordan, you had a question as well.
So the question is from Sudan Archiving, and it is curious to know more about what you both think on Sudanese rappers. Can you talk more about the space rappers occupy in Sudanese culture at the moment, and why is it that they are more open to criticizing the authorities in a way that feels less comfortable for other artists?
It was one thing that's really impressive that came out recently was a video of a group of Sudanese rappers in Egypt. It was posted on YouTube and it garnered what, like 3 million views, Snoopy, right?
Yeah,
In
a lot of
a
them.
very short span of
Shara,
time. And
ya Rab Shara.
Yeah.
أيوة، Rap Shara. And all of these guys are now in Egypt, displaced basically, and I think what makes them more comfortable basically speaking against power, is that it's just rap has always been like this in any language, Arabic or English or Japanese. And as it is risky for them being in Egypt, but that's why they also have to be careful and they have to adapt to new set of restrictions. Yes, they got rid of restrictions that they had in Sudan, but now there are new restrictions that they have to navigate. And but I think that's why they're always comfortable. It's a very collective art form, hip hop.
I just have one criticism of rappers that not a lot of the like only rap shara they were talking about Sudan and what's happening, but the majority or like the ones that has thousands of views and more subscribers, they're all silent and talking about things that are irrelevant. Maybe like, yeah, okay, you're not forced to be talking about Sudan, but how can you become a rapper or a legend without addressing what's happening? Like we have Public Enemy, we have NWA. All these guys are significant in the rap history because they were addressing issues that they were, facing in their community. But some rappers right now, are talking about things that personal things like I do this and I'm the king of this, and I mean, come on,
Yeah,
guys.
someone in the chat said you need more Macklemores.
Yeah,
Yeah, but Snoopy, the rappers you're talking about, many of them are based in UAE, and we need to understand that Macklemore has an American passport. You cannot be in these places and do
yeah.
certain things because then it's not just about the art; it's also about your family, and it's also about these are sticky situations,
You
guys.
get
So let's
blacklisted. Yeah,
yeah, it's not like in Sudan.
it's not
You
easy.
just go to in Sudan it's easier. I don't have to explain that.
Jordan, you had a question.
Yeah, I feel better about how I want to frame the question now, since you mentioned Public Enemy and NWA. So, in like Black American revolutionary history and like the post 68 moment, there are certain kind of cultural expressions that seem to become more pronounced as revolutionary forms of art making. So performance was preferred, poetry became more preferred, installation art became more preferred in the post 68 moment, as means of communicating radical, a kind of set of Black radical politics. I'm wondering if you are seeing certain cultural forms become more preferred or express in this post-revolutionary Sudanese context. So is there a reason, for instance, why you use film or turn to rap, for instance, or turn to the painterly, et cetera? And what do these respective forms do for you, you think, in terms of helping you more precisely articulate your radical politics?
Okay, I think it all goes back to accessibility of the tools of production themselves. I think hip hop, if I'm not mistaken, even in the US, hip hop became predominant among Black Americans, basically because in relative to other art forms, it was cheaper to produce. And I think the same applies to hip hop today in Sudan. It's cheaper to produce. You don't need an entire band to play with you to make music, as opposed to traditional Sudanese music. You often need a huge band. By hip hop and other forms, Zenig, for example, is also a relatively cheaper art form, and cheaper in the sense that the tools are accessible to a lot of people. I think film also reached a point where it became that as well. Almost everyone has a phone, and like Snoopy was saying, the tools for his education are also available online on YouTube. You can learn how to edit. This is basically how me and him, as well, and many others learned in the beginning, because we don't have film schools in Sudan. So I think it always goes back to that, the fact that the tools of production themselves are how available are they? And I think that reflects on then why is it more popular? Uh, yeah.
I think that I try to express as much as possible through films because like that's what I do. But also I try to help others in their own thing. Like in Sudan, the majority of my production was rap music videos because I can't rap better than them, but at least I have a tool that can improve or give them a better production. Also over here, sometimes I don't do poetry, but what I can do is I can film you doing poetry, and then that video goes viral, and then you talk about Sudan. I talk about Sudan in a different way. What I did in the music video, I didn't really sing, but I was acting and then storytelling. But I was helping other artists tell their stories and being behind the whole production and the lyrics and channeling what Sudanese people were feeling. So it's all about how I can collaborate with others in their projects, and then what I can do, I try my best into making their vision come to reality.
Thank you both so much. I'm going to ask one final question as we wrap up, which is, wondering what story do you hope is told about Sudanese art and Sudanese artists from this moment?
I think that well, I just want to send out a message that we are talented. There's a lot of talent in Sudan. There are a lot of great artists, but our issue is with the former regime, and then they're trying to destroy us as much as possible. So yeah, just to keep surprising people with what we're doing, through films, videos, paintings, art installations, all of that. So it's just to keep expressing through arts, because to me that's the most not cool, but it's an interesting way of telling your stories. Like people get bored of news and all of that. So through art you can always tell these stories, whether it's a sad or happy story, in an interesting way that makes that person realize what's happening right now. We see all these videos on Sudan and all of that, and it keeps us brainstorming of how to tell our stories in the most creative way without making it boring.
Yeah, I agree with Snoopy, and I would yeah, repeat his message as well. Just tell your stories. I think as much as possible we need all the artists to just be able to tell their stories.
Well, on that hopeful note, thank you so much, both Ibrahim Ahmed and Ahmed Mahmoud, for your wonderful insights. We will be wrapping up, but I'm sure also if you want to find their work or follow their work, they are both going to drop their websites in the chat, I'm sure, or they can post you in the right direction. Thank you all for joining us this morning or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you in an hour, inshallah, for the next session on archiving destruction with the wonderful Ibrahim and Haj and Mus'ab Baba.
Thank you.
I just want to send a shout out to Ibrahim and Musab.
And Monem, I see you.
I think there's a question. Is it allowed for us to answer?
I mean, go on. What was the question? Sorry.
It's
a very
by
Sudani way of
Iman.
finishing an event.
Because it has to do with disabled people, and I think that there are underrepresented all the time. So do you share any cultural and artistic experiences with disabled Sudanese artists, especially the talented blind artists? I mean, yeah, I recently worked with a disabled artist. It's a short film. I shot it in Uganda, and then she's like an activist. She did a lot of activism in Niala in Sudan, and now after war she came to Uganda. So her story, we wanted to make sure to tell her story about how she's navigating a new environment with the disability. And also in the past, like 5 years ago, we did this project with Basmat Khair. We were trying to raise awareness about how people should be dealing with disabled people, blind people, and all of that. So we did like these PSAs on what to do when, you know, a blind person raises his cane, how you should be acting and all of that. Part of, you know, social responsibility. I hope that answered the question.
And
Thank
thanks for
you.
bearing with us with these technical complications. But yeah,
No
thank you for
problem.
your answer and thank you for your contribution. Thank you to Ahmed who left, who had to go. And yeah, we'll see you all in an hour or a bit less than an hour,
Okay.
but yeah.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Thank you, guys.